I still remember the exact moment my world tilted, when I walked through those cemetery gates expecting nothing more than a quiet visit to my late wife's grave, only to find a young woman kneeling there, sobbing so hard her entire body shook. She looked so fragile, so defeated, like life had wrung her dry and then tossed her somewhere no one would notice. But what shattered me wasn't her tears. It was the fact that she was crying at my wife's grave. My wife who'd been gone for 3 years. My wife who, as far as I knew, had lived an honest, loving, transparent life with me. So tell me, would you have confronted her? Would you have asked the question burning holes through your chest the way I did? Because I couldn't hold back. I had to know who she was and why she was grieving for someone she shouldn't have even known existed. I approached slowly, unsure if I was walking toward a stranger or toward the collapse of everything I believed about my marriage. And when she looked up at me, her eyes red, her cheeks streaked with dirt and tears, I felt something twist violently inside me. She whispered, "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to intrude." But I wasn't thinking about intrusions. I was thinking about betrayal, about secrets, about the possibility that the woman I had loved more than my own life had hidden something unimaginable from me. So I asked her, "Why are you crying at my wife's grave?" And the way she froze, the fear that flickered across her face, made my stomach drop. It felt like the ground beneath me cracked open. So before I take you back to the start of all this, let me ask again, was I wrong for pushing her to tell me the truth? 3 years earlier, life had felt whole. My wife, Elena, was the kind of woman people remembered soft-spoken, kind-hearted, the type who baked cookies for neighbors and volunteered at shelters without ever posting about it online. We met when I was in the lowest point of my life, burned out, financially ruined, and convinced I was worthless. She was working as a nurse then, barely making enough to support herself, but she believed in me more fiercely than I believed in myself. Together, slowly, painfully, we built a life. Eventually, my business took off faster than either of us expected. Within 5 years, I went from barely paying rent to owning properties, investing, creating companies. People called me lucky, but I knew the truth. Everything I had was because she never let me give up. She was the backbone of my success. When she fell ill, it happened brutally fast. 1 week she had a cough, the next she was in the hospital, and within 2 months she was gone. I never recovered. Not truly. I kept building businesses, making money, expanding, but none of it mattered without her. I visited her grave every month, sometimes twice if the loneliness got too sharp. Her grave had always been my one sacred place, the only spot where I felt like I still had a connection to her. That's why seeing that young woman there hit me like a punch to the gut. She looked barely in her early 20s messy hair, worn clothes, hands trembling like she was holding in more than tears. She didn't look like someone who knew my wife. She looked like someone life kept stepping on. And as she stood up, brushing dirt off her knees, she tried to walk past me without another word. But the moment she stepped away from the grave, a tiny, wrinkled photograph slipped out of her pocket. I reflexively bent down and picked it up. It was a photo of my wife, but not any photo I'd ever seen. In the picture, she was younger, wearing clothes she didn't own when I met her, standing in front of a building I didn't recognize, and her arm was around a little girl maybe 5 years old. The girl in the picture looked a lot like the one standing in front of me now, just younger, rounder-faced, but unmistakably the same eyes. My breath caught. I looked at her and said, "Who are you?" She hesitated, then whispered, "My name is Elena." And then, with a voice so small I barely heard it, "She?" She was my mother, too. I swear my heart stopped. The world blurred around me, colors draining, sound fading. My wife had never mentioned a child. Not even once. We had tried for kids, desperately, painfully, but every attempt had ended in heartbreak. She used to cry in my arms, telling me how much she wished she could give me a family. And now this stranger was standing in front of me claiming to be her daughter. I felt anger rising like fire in my throat. "My wife never had a child," I said sharply. "You need to stop lying." But then she said something that made my blood run cold. She left me in the foster system when I was 6. She said she was dangerous to be around. She said she didn't want to drag me into her mess. Dangerous? My wife? I had known her for almost 15 years. She was gentle, warm, and capable of hurting anyone. Why would she abandon a child? Why would she hide something so monumental from me? I demanded answers. "Explain, now." She flinched but nodded slowly, like she had expected this moment, dreaded it, maybe even prepared for it. She told me her mother, my wife, had grown up with a violent father and an addict mother. She ran away at 16, desperate for a better life. But in running, she made mistakes, fell in with the wrong people, worked odd jobs, even lived in shelters for years. During that time, she had Alina with a man who disappeared long before the baby was born. She tried to raise her, tried to be a good mom, but the cycle of poverty swallowed her. She was constantly moving, constantly hiding from people she owed money to. And one day she made the hardest decision of her life. She gave her daughter up, telling herself that the system, even with all its flaws, was safer than the life she could offer. But she promised she'd come back, Alina whispered. She said once she got her life together, she'd find me. She never did. Instead, she met me. She built a new life. She healed. She moved on, leaving her daughter behind. Hearing all this felt like someone was peeling back skin from my bones. I was torn between fury, heartbreak, and utter disbelief. My wife, my perfect loving wife, had lived an entire life before me that she had never mentioned. She had always talked about wanting children, but she never said she already had one. I asked Alina why she showed up now, after 3 years. She pulled out another folded piece of paper. A letter, yellowed edges. My wife's handwriting, I recognized it instantly. "I didn't read this until a few months ago," she said. "They found it in the old files of the foster home. It said she wanted to come back for me. It said she loved me. It said if I ever wanted to find her, I should look for the woman who married a man named Aaron. That was me. It felt like someone punched me in the chest," she continued. "I searched your name and saw the article about her death. I didn't get to meet her again. I just wanted to say goodbye." My legs felt weak. I couldn't breathe. Everything I believed about my marriage was unraveling. And yet, looking at this girl who had my wife's eyes, I realized she wasn't the enemy. She was just a kid who had been left behind, and that's when I reached the moment that changed everything. The moment where I felt torn between protecting my wife's memory and uncovering the truth she never wanted me to know before I tell you what I decided next. I want you to pause for a second. Put yourself in my shoes. Imagine the person you loved most in the world kept a secret this big, this heartbreaking. Imagine finding out your wife had a daughter she abandoned but never stopped loving. What would you do? Would you walk away? Would you take her in? Would you resent her? Tell me in the comments, because I genuinely want to know if my reaction was justified. When Alina finally stopped crying, she turned to leave again, whispering, "I didn't mean to disturb you. I just wanted to say goodbye, that's all." But something inside me snapped, not out of anger this time, but out of something rawer, something more human. I grabbed her wrist gently and said, "You don't have to go." She froze, and for a moment I saw both hope and fear flicker across her face. I should have been furious. I should have felt betrayed. But all I felt was a crushing sorrow for this girl who had been denied her mother's love twice, first in childhood, then in death. I told her, "If you'll let me, I want to hear everything. All of it. Your life. Her life. Whatever you know. I want to understand. We sat on a cold stone bench under a leafless tree as the sky darkened. She told me stories of growing up shuffled between foster homes. The abuse, the loneliness, the constant feeling that she wasn't wanted. She told me how she tried to track her mother for years, but hit dead ends until that letter resurfaced. She told me she hated her mother for leaving her, but also loved her so fiercely it hurt that every word stabbed me, because I kept thinking, if my wife had trusted me with the truth, maybe we could have found this girl sooner. Maybe we could have helped her. Maybe she wouldn't have spent her entire life thinking she'd been thrown away. By the time she finished, it was dark. And part of me knew I had already made my decision. Even if I hadn't said it out loud, I brought her home. Not permanently. Not yet. But I gave her a warm meal, let her shower, and set up the guest room. She kept apologizing, saying she didn't want to be a burden. But the truth was, the real burden was living with unanswered questions about the woman I once thought I knew completely. Over the next few weeks, Alina and I talked every day. She showed me pictures from her childhood. I showed her pictures of her mother weddings, vacations, holidays. She cried seeing them, sometimes silently, sometimes uncontrollably. I cried too, because each picture reminded me of how much my wife carried alone. Slowly, painfully, I pieced together the truth. My wife hadn't abandoned her because she didn't love her. She abandoned her because she thought she wasn't good enough, wasn't stable enough, wasn't safe enough. She wanted to come back for her, but when she met me, she was terrified that telling me the truth would make me leave. And when we tried to have kids and failed, the guilt must have eaten at her every single day. One night, while going through her old belongings, I found something that nearly broke me completely, an unmailed envelope addressed to the foster agency. Inside was a letter asking if she could reconnect with her daughter. It was dated just 2 months before. She fell sick. She had been planning to reunite with her. She died before she could. When I showed the letter to Alina, she sobbed so hard she collapsed into my arms. And for the first time, holding her felt natural. She wasn't a stranger anymore. She was a living piece of the woman I lost. Weeks turned into months. I helped her get a stable job, helped her rent her own place, helped her go to therapy. My friends thought I was crazy, taking in the daughter of a woman who had lied to me. But I didn't see it that way. I saw her as someone my wife had loved, but never gotten the chance to love enough. And when she turned 21, something happened that I'll never forget. She showed up at my doorstep holding a small box. Inside was a silver chain with a pendant, my wife's pendant, the one she wore every day until she died. "I want you to have this," she said. I shook my head. "It's yours. She kept it all those years for you." But she smiled through her tears. "I know she loved you too. This is for both of us." We hugged for the first time without grief being the only thing holding us together. Now, 2 years later, she calls me family. Sometimes she calls me dad, not because I replaced anyone, but because I chose her when life had never given her a choice. And I like to think that somewhere, my wife is finally at peace knowing her two worlds are no longer separated by secrets. If there's anything I've learned from this entire mess, it's that love doesn't always look perfect. Sometimes it's broken, messy, full of mistakes, but still real. Still worth fighting for. And even though my wife lied, I don't hate her for it. I wish she trusted me more. But I know she did the best she could with the life she had. If you were on my side, hit that like button. If you think I made the right choice by taking Alina into my life, let me know in the comments. And if you've ever faced something like this, secrets, family, grief, share your thoughts below. Make sure you subscribe for more stories like this. I'll see you all in the next story.